This is a slightly different machine to the others that we've talked about so far. This is called a cover stitch. This is a chain stitch, and we often see it on stretch fabrics like our t-shirts and sweatshirts. Now it can do many variations in stitch. It can be a twin needle or it can be a 3 needle. It can have what we call cover on the top, where you can see the thread swinging back and forth between the stitches. But in all the instances, we have what we call a spreader underneath that neatens our raw edge as well as stitching. So this sort of does the two jobs in one go. It is used primarily on jerseys and on knits, but you can use it on woven fabrics. It's fine to use on wovens. Classically, we often see it with belt loops, where we are just folding a piece of fabric and it's neatening the back edge and stitching it in one go. So our cover stitch here, if we wanted to change the threads, we would do this as the overlocker and not threads on the top and just pull them through. So if you haven't watched the overlock film, please do so first before going on the cover stitch. We have a little perspex shield here, so that if the needles were to snap, this is protecting you. So by all means, you can move it out of the way to thread the needles and then put it back in place. Remember, if you have long hair, it needs to be tied back before we're on a machine. And also turning the wheel at the side, you do it in the direction of the arrow that's printed on the side. Now, the cover stitch has 2 treadles, just like the overlocker. So the small treadle lifts the presser foot, whereas the large treadle is designed for our 2 feet to go on, and as we depress, the machine goes. Now, a big difference here with the cover stitch is that it won't stitch in fresh air. So if we come to the end of our fabric where we are stitching, we need to have a piece of scrap. We just place that underneath. It will run onto the scrap, and then we can cut our work off behind. Because the cover stitch is what we call a chain stitch, as opposed to the lock stitch, to undo our thread, if you start where you finish, you can pull the thread and it will undo. I'm sure you've all had an experience where you've pulled a thread and the whole thing has come undone. And that's because we're on a chain. So we need to make sure we secure those thread ends on a garment to make sure that this doesn't happen. For threading, if pulling them through doesn't work for you, the front of the machine will open. There is no map as the overlocker, but there is a chart on the side of the machine that you can follow. But there is only 1 thread that goes underneath, not 2 as the overlocker. So that is our cover stitch machine.